Today is the fourth day of this April 1983 5-day retreat. In today's talk, we will speak about death and dying, and we'll use a koan from the Blue Cliff record. Before me is the book Two Zen Classics by Sekida. The number is Case 82, and the title is Tairyu's Indestructible Dharma Body. A monk said to Tairyu, "Man's body will ultimately decompose. What is the indestructible Dharma body?" Tairyu said, "Flowers cover the hillside like brocade. The vale lies deep in shade. Another translation says, "Mountain flowers bloom like brocade. The valley streams are brimming blue as indigo." The collector and commentator of this series of koans wrote this verse. I'll only read the first part of it. "The question came from ignorance. The answer was not understood. The moon is clear. The wind is cool. The wintry pine stands on the peak. The question was, man's body will ultimately decompose. What is the indestructible Dharma body? Dharma body refers to one of the three bodies of Buddha, according to a development of thinking. And putting into words three reality planes of Buddha. I'm not going to go into it. But the Dharma body or Dharmakaya refers to what in one glossary is called cosmic consciousness. All illuminating cosmic consciousness, oneness, or the law body, and indestructible. Because it was never created, can never be destroyed. So do you hear the monk who says, this body here one day will rot, die, or be burned? What is the indestructible body? I've studied quite a bit the scriptures of this religion, heard about it, heard that there is such a thing as the indestructible Dharma body of the Buddha. and everyone is Buddha, so maybe I have this indestructible body too. What is it? Please tell me. Because I'm afraid. I'm afraid of losing this body. I'm afraid of dying. Of this body and its life coming to an end. If I could only know this indestructible Dharma body that's supposed to be there somewhere, I need not be afraid any longer. I'm believing in it, but yet that does not allay my fears. I want to know it. What is it? Tell me. And this particular teacher says, flowers covered the hillside like brocade. The valley lies deep in the shade. Before we get to the answer, let's be more concerned with a question, because it's a universal question. What is death? And is there something after death? Something I can look forward to, hope, set my hope on, put my faith into, to allay my fear of dying? Actually, the fear of death is used by religions or their intermediaries to bring people into the fold by offering solace and hope to the fearful of the dying. Just picked up 3 sayings out of the Zen tradition. One of them saying, if you realize your true nature, you are free from life and death. It's part of a koan in the Mumonkan. If you came across that, being like every human being afraid of dying, or let's say in touch with that fear, because a lot of us aren't even in touch with this fear. We have successfully repressed it. Don't think about it. We avoid it like the plague. But can't avoid it forever because somebody dies. Well, then we go to the funeral parlor and we see someone there dressed up, made up, better than he looked when he was alive. So that's a new faith. Faith in preservation, or whatever you call that process. Somewhere or other you don't see a dead person. Remember, I'd never seen a dead person until I came to American funeral parlors, but these didn't seem to be dead people. And then when my mother died, went to a little appendix, sort of an addition to a cremation house, I don't know what it was called, and there she was laid out in one of the rooms, just in a plain white, it wasn't a dress. I hadn't seen her in quite a while, and I didn't even recognize her. I was a dead woman. sorrow deeply engraved in the face. So, being afraid of death and of dying and of this body decomposing, because these days it doesn't decompose anymore, you have to buy not only a casket but something that's waterproof around it, so it doesn't decompose. Maybe it's for health reasons, I don't know. Sort of the survival of mummification and pyramids to preserve forever, whatever that means, the human body. And yet the fear of dying is not allayed by all of this. It's there, very much present, consciously or unconsciously. So here you hear a phrase, somebody says it to you, you read it or hear it. If you realize your true nature, then you're free of life and death. You may skip over this of life but you're free of death. Hey, I want to realize my true nature very quickly. As quickly as possible, so I can be done with this fear of death. So I'll join. I'll become your disciple. Tell me what to do. So one person told me that after attending a Zen center for 15 years. He said, the reason I got up every morning and went every night for every affair is to rid myself of life and death. And he was laughing. He said, I'm still not rid of it. Another such saying another statement in the same koan is, when you set yourself free from life and death, you know where you're going. I want to know where I'm going. I'm sick and tired of floundering around, being afraid of where I'm going after I die, so I gotta do this thing so I can set myself free of this fear of life and death. And another Zen poem is, strive as you wake with every breath, that you may live past day, past death. Is that worth striving for? To live past, what does it mean to live past day? Counting days till I die? Maybe. That's good enough. Past death, that's good. I don't want to die. I want to be done with this sick feeling in the stomach and intestines whenever I think of dying. In other religions, there is the promise of paradise, also the threat of hell. A lot of people who are not so sure of whether they're doing right or not forget about the whole thing. Say there is no such thing as heaven or hell. And yet it has a great magnetic force, this thought of heaven, the kingdom of heaven, to which I will float after death, being with the angels, with all my former loved ones, relatives. often doesn't think it through very much. Bernard Shaw once tried to think it through in Man and Superman. And Don Juan, who was in hell, and a man he had murdered who was in heaven, they made a deal to exchange places. It was too boring in heaven and too lively in hell. When I was a little girl, I heard we often visited churches and monasteries on trips, because you do, wherever you are, you visit the famous buildings, and there are many famous churches and monasteries, medieval monasteries, which are quite beautiful, quite attractive, and fascinating to walk through these halls. And in one of them, I was told that the monks who used to live there were not allowed to speak at all. The only thing they were allowed to say when they met each other on this crosswalk was, "Remember, brother, that you're mortal." And there's a Christian prayer that says, "Teach me, O Lord, to reflect that I must die so I may become wise." I wonder whether this too is born out of the fear of death, the preoccupation with death. I think of it all the time. And maybe this fear won't drive me and haunt me, because I'm thinking about it all the time. Fear won't creep up on me while I'm not thinking of it. I'm keeping the fear in abeyance by thinking about death all the time, about dying, about being mortal. And you, brother, too. This was an ancient Indian custom before the time of the Buddha, and taken over by Buddhists to meditate in cemeteries, to be close to the place where the dead are buried, be in touch with it, in order to reflect upon the transiency of life. One meditation is to already see the skeleton inside yourself and inside of everyone else, so you're not attracted by physical beauty that may temporarily cover this skeleton. And yet the fear of death has persisted. Maybe not for everyone. I'm not saying that. But for most human beings. Parents feel real squeamish, real at a loss. Many parents, when the question of death is brought up by the child. When the cat has been run over, or the grandfather has died, what's happened? And often parents hesitate what to say. Often they say, the cat has gone to sleep, or grandpa is sleeping. One mother told me that her son doesn't want to go to sleep anymore, since grandfather went to sleep that way. Just noticed the other day, walking through the cemetery, on a stone it said, "He'll sleep so-and-so." was a child and read that, I'd be horrified. Put a sleeping person under the ground. What if they do that to me while I'm sleeping? And yet other parents who have somehow or other resolved this taboo of not speaking about death to children find that kids accept it very, very, very easily. To bury the cat, there may be sadness. One girl told her father after the cat was buried, now we don't have to think about it anymore, do we? The dead cat, meaning. It's quite a response. Let's be done with this now. Maybe felt that the father or mother weren't quite done with it for fear of that the child may have all kinds of scary ideas, but the scary ideas are in the parents, not in the child. Children all over this war-ridden world witness death left and right, front and back. If you see it, if it is not denied or made a false story about, it is taken for what it is. Of course, in these war-ridden countries, an incredibly cruel thing that children are witnessing all over. No one could possibly disguise that, because it's there in the streets. What is the indestructible Dharma body? That longing is there to have an indestructible body. And there are legends about finding some kind of a elixir which if you take it, you'll live forever. Or slaying the dragon and bathing in the dragon's blood, your body is covered, so you never will die, can never be wounded, hurt, or killed. Our movies, our science fiction movies, or these James Bond series, the villains build these indestructible structures where they ensconced in cement and iron and steel. Maybe in space it gets wilder all the time. They cannot be reached, but yes, the adversary or builds something more indestructible and destructive to destroy the indestructible, and then for a while be ensconced in the indestructible, and so it goes on and on. We want to know, don't we, whether there is something that will not die, and whether I can have that or be in touch with it, be taken care of by it. Why am I afraid of death? What's the fear? There's a lot of aspects of it. One of them is getting older. Losing the useful body, getting wrinkled, shriveled, or expanded, whatever the case may be. Hair getting gray, falling out, losing one's attractiveness to other people. Maybe with that, the love of other people, because one associates love with physical closeness. If I'm not attractive physically anymore, then no one will love me. I'll be lonesome. Fear of losing one's mental powers, that one may not be able to think anymore. Because when I've seen old people going senile, always telling the same story over and over, and one doesn't hear that one does the same thing. Maybe not quite the same. Remember when my mother-in-law was getting very old? She was doing that, just telling the same story over and over. And she was just skin and bones. She was over 80. But she didn't want to leave her home. She didn't want to live with either one of her sons. She just wanted to sit in her rocking chair and be in her house and do what little she needed. Take care of herself. What she needed. Take care of herself. Finally, after lengthy discussion about it, he said, well, why not? We'll try. Let's try. She didn't want to be a bother to anybody. Just wanted to sit in a rocking chair. And then one of her sons became very worried about her mental condition and subscribed for her to Reader's Digest, National Geographic, and the TV Guide, hoping to stimulate stimulate her mental faculties so they would so they would stay alive and interested. But Reader's Digest, National Geographic's, TV Guide piled up. She never touched it. She just sat in a rocking chair and rocked. Why aren't we worried that our mental faculties may be affected by reading TV Guide and Reader's Digest? Why am I leaving the National Geographic out? They may be. Really, they may be. That's our exclusive stimulation and input. Another fear about death is that it may be very painful, lengthy. We've seen people languish with cancer or some other terminal disease. And seeing that from the outside, as it were, it seems horrifying. The idea, this is how I may go, is horrifying. Not so much death, but this long process of withering away, languishing away in pain, as we observe it in someone else. How it really is and feels, do we know? We don't. We have ideas about it, and the ideas scare us. While we're alive, we're already scared to death by the idea of death. The other fears of losing what we have laboriously accumulated. Money. I don't know whether this applies so much to the people who are sitting here. Houses, paintings, family, children, grandchildren, maybe great-grandchildren is all sort of our possession. We don't want to leave it. We want to see how they're coming along in life, whether they will, maybe one of them become the President of the United States, be successful. And we just plain don't want to leave what we possess. We're afraid of that. We can't imagine it. That's why in ancient times kings took all their possessions with them, even their wives, servants. There were sometimes funeral parties buried of 70 and 80 people to a pyramid or to a tomb in ancient Middle Eastern countries and in India too, I understand. Taking it all with you. Where to? To fantasy land. All the product of thinking and imagining. Now you can say, how do you know that? Do you want to believe in it? You can. I'm not telling you not to. But at least try to see what the substance, what your belief is based on. What you take your belief from and what you found it in. Whether it is anything other than thinking. Either your thoughts or the thoughts of others. Written or spoken. And where does this process of thinking issue from? Unless you know that for yourself, you observe it, how it comes from memory, from something's already taped, programmed, recorded into the brain by past experiences. Unless you know that, you're going to be trapped by your own thoughts, thinking there's something real to them. You must find that out, how this mind functions. Unless you like your traps and cages. More than understanding the truth of how this mind works and lays out traps for itself. In addition to the fear of the pain of dying, which we don't know but we have seen in others, there's the fear of not knowing, really not knowing, in spite of our belief. Well, if our belief is strong enough, then at this point we're satisfied. We're going to go to heaven. We're going to be reborn in a better existence. Maybe in a worse existence. We don't know. But we hope for the better existence. But if we don't believe, then what is there? Where are we going? I don't want to believe, but I want to know from someone. But how can anybody tell you? Death means precisely what is not known. There's something known, it's not dying, it's knowing. It's the continuation of thought. Death is the ending of thinking and imagining and images and fantasies. It's the ending of that. And yet we want to know what this ending is. We want to make it into a thought. Do you see that? And as soon as it's a thought, it's the continuation of thinking. of the me which is thinking. The fact that this body dies, decomposes, unless it's treated. I don't think anyone doubts that or argues with that. But the coming to an end of this, the story of my life, all my remembrances, all my future hopes, projections, the coming to an end of that is upsetting, to say the least, to most people. It's terrifying. Unless one sees what this whole process is. And that this process need not come to an end when this body dies and decomposes, can come to an end right now. And if it doesn't, why not? Why is there the clinging to pictures and images of myself? Because it's not this. This is just this. Image is something extra. Good looking I am, how clever I am, how successful I am, or what a dismal failure I am. We don't mind that image coming to an end, although people cling to that too. I'm a failure, I'm a loser. And the image has power. If one thinks that way, one acts that way. So now, one may think, well, how can I bring all this to an end? That's another thought, another demand or want, wanting to die. Wanting to die is not dying, it's wanting. It's the continuation of wanting with a new object, this time dying to myself. So can the question in questioning or the attending always be put into what is actually going on? Wanting. What is it? Physically. And where does it come from? What's the root of it? Not thinking about it, but getting in touch with it by questioning it. Whether you will get in touch with it or not, you don't know. But you can try. Fearing, what is it? Where does it come from? What's the root source of fearing and wanting? As it comes up, and it comes up all the time, fearing and wanting, like Siamese twins. I don't want my fear. I want to be free of fear. As it comes up, what is it? I don't call it want or fear. Who or mu? What? Refusing to engage in any fantasy to get out of this conundrum. Because then I'm back in creating something for myself which assuages the fear. It's temporarily settled down. And an hour later I'm overwhelmed by it. Because fantasies are not stable. No thought is stable. Why do I want to continue as an image of myself? Why am I afraid of this image coming to an end? Do I see that it is an image? Do you see the fear that an image generates? And the power of that fear affecting your whole life? This fear of being no one, nothing special. Not knowing who or what you are. Which doesn't mean you don't know how to get to your factory or office. Forget how to do the work. But not as me who needs to be treated this way, responded to in a certain way, and respond in a certain way as I see myself. We've talked about this in all the previous talks. We don't have to go over it. What is the indestructible Dharma body? And the one who's asked this question says, flowers cover the hillside like brocade, and the vale lies deep in shade. Commentator says, the moon is clear, the wind is cold, the wintry pine stands on the peak. Do you feel the cold wind? Without any resistance? Not bracing against it? Not calling it cold wind? Letting it blow right through? Completely open? Like that solitary pine? The flowers on the hillside or underfoot, do you see them? Not as the indestructible Dharma body. That's trying to make something out of them to cling to. But as they are. Open today, tomorrow withered. Not philosophizing about it, but seeing it with eyes that are unclouded by fear, by wanting to be or by wanting not to be. Unclouded by wanting, just seeing. Who or what? Attending. The stream flowing. One day it's flowing into the lake, the next day the lake is flowing into the stream. Without any conflict. Can you see that? So completely, so freely, so emptily of wanting to close it, to remember it. Without fear. We will end here for today.